Welcome to Leading Beyond Limits, the podcast where we explore the extraordinary journeys and insights of remarkable leaders who have pushed the boundaries of what's possible. Your host, Angel Radcliffe, who is a digital transformation leader, author, speaker, and financial educator, will lead each episode and dive deep into the stories, strategies, and philosophies that have empowered these exceptional individuals to lead, inspire, and achieve beyond the ordinary. We're about to embark on a journey of discovery and inspiration, and together, we'll learn what it takes to lead beyond limits. So grab your cape, or at least your favorite coffee mug, because we're about to unravel the extraordinary tales of trailblazers who've turned impossible into I'm possible. Let's get started.
Imagine you're sitting at your desk, just looking over the quarterly report for your team. Revenue is up, profit margins are solidly in the green, and, well, every single key performance indicator has been absolutely smashed.
Right. By all accounts, it's a perfect spreadsheet.
Exactly. A flawless dashboard. Now, imagine finding out that exact same high-performing team is quietly updating their resumes and actively interviewing elsewhere.
Yeah, that is a jarring juxtaposition, isn't it?
It really is. Today, we're exploring a deeply uncomfortable reality for leaders. Basically, why a flawless spreadsheet is sometimes the very first sign that your culture is quietly collapsing.
It's something that happens constantly in the corporate world, We've built this entire business ecosystem around the idea that data is the ultimate truth.
Right.
But we completely forget that data only measures the past.
Yeah, we do. But hey, before we really get into the weeds on that, I just have to say right off the top, I'm genuinely so happy to be back in the studio with you today and with you listening.
Oh, I feel exactly the same way.
Yeah.
It's really great to be back.
There's just something really grounding about having this dedicated time to, step away from the noise and thoroughly dissect a complex idea. And today, we're definitely going to need that mental space.
We are, yeah. The topic we're looking at today requires a very specific kind of focus.
So for this deep dive, we're exploring a leadership micro-scenario from Leading Beyond Limits. It focuses on a deeply ingrained tension that almost every leader faces eventually.
It's that heavy, often silent friction between measurable outcomes and human reality.
Right, the human reality. The scenario centers around one incredibly provocative statement, which is, performance is a lagging indicator.
That's a heavy line.
It is. And I want to set the expectations right now for you listening. If you've ever felt a quiet sense of dread while looking at perfectly fine quarterly results, this deep dive is for you. We aren't looking for quick fixes today.
No, absolutely not.
We aren't going to give you some tactical 5-step checklist for your next all-hands meeting. Instead, we're going to thoughtfully examine the psychological weight, the emotional pressure, and really the heavy responsibility of navigating leadership when the spreadsheet says one thing.
But the room says something else entirely.
Exactly.
And to understand that tension, we really have to start by looking at why we're so naturally drawn to those dashboards in the first place.
Because we love our data.
We do. We love the certainty of it. The scenario tells us, quite bluntly, numbers tell you where you were yesterday. But if that's true, why do leaders treat them like crystal balls?
Okay, let's unpack this. Because there is a profound, almost addictive psychological safety in those numbers. I used to think of it like driving a car while exclusively staring at the rearview mirror.
Right, a classic analogy.
Yeah, but honestly, that's a bit of a cliche, I think. It's more like this. Relying solely on performance metrics is like judging the structural integrity of a bridge purely by the number of cars currently driving over it.
Oh, wow. That's a much better way to look at it. The traffic volume is your KPI.
Exactly. The traffic looks fantastic. Throughput is at an all-time high. It feels incredibly safe because the picture is sharp, it's undeniable, and you can count the cars.
Right.
But that metric tells you absolutely nothing about the microfractures forming in the concrete underneath. The traffic looks great right up until the exact moment the bridge snaps.
Yeah, it tells you nothing about the cliff you might be approaching.
So why do we do it? Why do leaders cling so tightly to the Excel sheet when intuitively they know it only represents the past?
Well, because the Excel sheet offers the illusion of certainty. And certainty, especially in high-stakes environments, is a leader's most comforting blanket.
What comforting blanket, yeah.
When leaders delay or hesitate in difficult moments, when they intuitively feel that tension you mentioned, that something is fundamentally off with their team's dynamic, it is rarely because they lack information.
Really? You think they already know?
They almost always already feel it.
So if it's not a lack of information, what is it?
It's a deep, often unacknowledged discomfort with risk, with visibility, and accountability. Waiting for the numbers to drop provides a safe, quantifiable reason to act.
It acts as a shield.
Exactly. It shields the leader from the vulnerability of making a call based on their intuition. Think about it practically. If you intervene because the spreadsheet has suddenly turned red, well, you're just doing your job.
Right, no one questions it. You're reacting to the data.
But if you intervene because you sense the culture is fraying, yet the numbers are still bright green, now you're stepping out onto a ledge.
And you're stepping out there entirely alone. You're exposing yourself. Because if you're wrong, you don't have the data to point to and say, well, the spreadsheet told me to do it. You just look like you're meddling.
Precisely. It's the ultimate defensive maneuver. I couldn't do anything until I had the data, but this scenario completely dismantles that defense.
Yeah.
It states very clearly, by the time the numbers drop, the culture has already failed.
Man, that's a stark reality. The numbers aren't reflecting the current state. They're just the echoing footsteps of a culture that existed weeks or maybe even months ago.
Right. And by the time those footsteps reach your desk in the form of a quarterly report, the underlying capacity of the team might be completely exhausted.
So what does this all mean for a leader's day-to-day? Because I really want to push back on this from a pragmatic corporate standpoint.
Sure. Good boy.
The scenario says, culture tells you where you will be tomorrow. And it notes that executive wisdom is watching the energy in the room, not just the Excel sheet. But let's be real here. How does a leader actually justify a major shift to their board or to their stakeholders based on something as subjective as energy?
He's tough.
Right. If I walk into a boardroom tomorrow and say, hey, we need to scale back our Q3 targets because I sense fatigue in the room, they're going to demand data. I can't just say the vibes are off. I get laughed out of the room.
What's fascinating here is how responsibility shows up exactly when certainty is incomplete. You're absolutely right. You cannot just walk into a boardroom and talk about vibes. That's amateurish.
Totally.
But that is exactly where the concept of executive wisdom becomes the critical differentiator. Wisdom isn't just having the feeling, it's having the capacity to translate that human reality into tangible business implications.
Okay, but how? What does that translation actually look like? Because I'm still asking the board to take a huge leap of faith based on my personal read of the room.
Well, you don't pitch it as a leap of faith. You pitch it as risk mitigation and capacity management.
Oh, I see.
Instead of saying the team feels tired, executive wisdom says, we are currently operating at 110% utilization to hit these targets, which leaves us with zero surge capacity.
Right, you put it in their language.
Exactly. You say, I'm seeing leading indicators of burnout, like a drop in collaborative problem solving and an increase in isolated decision-making, which introduces significant operational risk for Q4. So, to protect our long-term yield, we are recalibrating Q3.
Wow, okay. So you're still acting on the energy, but you've synthesized what that energy actually means for the business.
Yes. But even then, there's a good chance the board says, well, utilization is high, but the throughput is great, so let's keep pushing.
Yeah, they very well might. And that's exactly why leadership at that level is just so insanely intense, because leadership decisions are almost always made with partial clarity.
Almost always.
If you wait for 100% certainty, if you wait for the board to unanimously agree because the data is finally bad enough to prove your point, you are no longer leading.
You're just reacting to history.
Leading versus reacting to history. That is such a crucial distinction. It implies that true leadership inherently involves an element of prediction.
And prediction always carries the risk of being wrong.
Exactly.
It requires immense self-trust, presence, and judgment. You have to step away from the safety of the historical data and trust your read on the culture. The true burden of leadership isn't managing the numbers. Honestly, a well-written algorithm can manage numbers. The true burden is managing the tension of acting on incomplete certainty.
Yeah.
It's carrying the weight of knowing you have to intervene based on the energy in the room, knowing full well you might face intense pushback because the data hasn't caught up to the reality yet.
It's an incredible emotional pressure. You're essentially standing in the gap between the trailing data and the approaching reality, and you're the only one who can feel the stretch.
You really are.
Which brings us to a specific dynamic that the scenario highlights, and I think it's the most insidious trap a leader can fall into. We're moving from this abstract idea of energy into a highly specific, very dangerous reality.
You're talking about the high-performing team.
Yes. The scenario gives us this stark warning. A high-performing team that is burning out will always hit a wall.
Always.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because there is a massive, painful paradox here. If a team is high-performing, the numbers look great.
They look flawless.
Right. By definition, they are crushing their KPIs. But they might be secretly running on fumes, completely brute-forcing their way to those results.
Yeah. And that is the ultimate trap of the lagging indicator. In this specific situation, the numbers aren't just hiding the truth, they are actively contradicting the truth.
Yeah. Contradicting the truth.
Yeah. They are telling you everything is fine, while the foundation is literally crumbling underneath you.
Right. So if you intervene to fix the energy when the numbers are fantastic, you make yourself incredibly vulnerable to criticism. You are stepping in and potentially slowing down your most productive team.
Which looks crazy to an outsider.
Totally. Everyone else in the company is looking at you asking, why on earth are you fixing something that isn't broken? You're fixing something that doesn't look broken yet, but you know the structural integrity of the concrete is failing.
This raises an important question, and it's one the scenario points directly to. It says, the question is if you see the fatigue before the failure.
Right.
But I'd argue that seeing it is only half the battle. Seeing it is just observation, acting on it. That requires a profound level of psychological courage.
Because there's no reward for it. In fact, there's often a penalty.
Precisely. Yeah. Let's play out a quick hypothetical. You have an engineering team that has been pulling 60-hour weeks for 3 months to hit a massive Q3 product launch.
Okay.
The launch is a huge success. The KPIs are phenomenal. But you look at the team and realize they are completely hollowed out. They aren't debating ideas anymore. They're just silently agreeing to get things over with.
I've seen that exact dynamic. The silent compliance of an exhausted team.
Yes.
It looks like harmony on the surface, but it's actually apathy.
Exactly. The yes has become a symptom of exhaustion, not alignment. So, as a leader, you see this fatigue before the failure. You intervene.
Right.
You step in and say, we are delaying the Q4 roadmap by a month. I'm forcing everyone to take time off, and we are lowering our short-term output expectations. What happens next?
Well, the numbers dip, or at least the growth curve flattens out temporarily.
The numbers dip. The board asks why you took your foot off the gas when you had so much momentum. Some of your peers might even think you've lost your edge. But here's the critical part. The catastrophic failure never happens. The mass exodus of your top engineers never happens. The major security flaw caused by sleep-deprived coding never happens.
And because the failure never happens, nobody knows you saved them from it. You can't prove a negative. You can't point to a chart and say, look at this massive disaster I prevented.
You will never get credit for saving the numbers in that situation, because you intervened before the lagging indicators could prove you right.
Yes, so tough.
You essentially have to be okay with playing the role of the villain in the short term, to be the protector in the long term. This highlights exactly why true leadership is, at its core, a solitary and highly reflective practice.
You really are alone in that decision.
You have to be deeply anchored in your own values. You have to be willing to bear the risk of action entirely without the validation of a crisis.
Without the validation of a crisis, that is such a tough pill to swallow. We are so conditioned to be firefighters,
Oh, absolutely.
We love the heroics of swooping in when the dashboard turns red, putting out the fire, and saving the quarter. It's visible, it's celebrated, and it's easily quantified.
Everyone loves the firefighter.
Exactly. But what you're saying, and what the scenario is arguing, is that the highest form of leadership is fire prevention. And fire prevention is boring, it's invisible, and it often requires you to tell people to stop playing with matches when they're having a great time.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of what a culture actually is, it really shifts the perspective. We often talk about culture as if it's the perks, the flexible hours, the retreats, the mission statement on the wall.
Ping pong tables.
Right, ping pong tables. But in the context of this scenario, culture is the collective capacity of your people to endure and innovate.
The collective capacity, not just how happy they are, but how much they can actually bear without breaking.
Right. When the scenario says, by the time the numbers drop, the culture has already failed, it means that collective capacity has been fully exhausted.
They literally have nothing left to give.
Nothing. The numbers dropping is just the physical manifestation of an emotional and psychological depletion that actually occurred months ago.
Wow.
The concrete snapped back in August. The bridge just finally collapsed in October.
It makes you completely rethink every quarterly report you've ever read. It reframes the entire concept of what a leader is supposed to be doing on a daily basis. You aren't just a manager of metrics, you're supposed to be a guardian of capacity.
Guardian of capacity. That's a perfect encapsulation. And watching the energy in the room is the only real-time mechanism you have to gauge that capacity. But doing that requires you to be fiercely present.
Which is incredibly hard when you're bombarded with data all day.
It is. You cannot read the energy of a room if you're constantly looking down at your laptop, refreshing the real-time dashboards on Slack, and tracking minute-by-minute output. You have to look up.
You really do.
You have to look at the faces of your team. You have to listen to the quality of their conversations, not just the outcome. Are they vibrant, engaged, and respectfully challenging each other?
Yeah.
Or are they brittle, frantic, and conflict avoidant?
Yeah, as we discussed earlier, high performance can look very similar to manic burnout if you aren't paying close attention to the human element.
It really can.
The brittle high performer, we've all seen that, or maybe even been that person. The team member who is hitting every single target, their utilization is at 100%, but you know intuitively that they are one slightly challenging email away from completely snapping.
Oh, yeah.
The dashboard says they are your absolute best asset, but the energy in the room says they are a major operational liability just waiting to happen.
And that is the exact moment where the spreadsheet itself becomes a liability for the leader. Because if you lean on the lagging indicator of their past success to make your next decision, you will push them right into the wall.
You'll break them.
You will assign them the next critical project because they always deliver, completely ignoring the fact that they're running on empty.
It's a quiet, heavy responsibility. It requires you to actively choose the harder path. You have to choose the discomfort of ambiguity over the comfort of a clean spreadsheet.
You do.
And as we start to bring this conversation to a close, I want to gently transition us away from the analysis of these concepts. We've dissected the mechanics of why this tension exists, but understanding it intellectually is very different from sitting with it.
It is. The intellectual understanding is just a prerequisite.
Exactly. So I want to move us into a space of quiet reflection for you listening to this right now. Because as we've unpacked today, navigating leadership is rarely about waiting for perfect clarity to magically appear on an Excel sheet so you can make a risk-free decision.
It almost never does. And honestly, if you wait for it, you've waited too long.
It's about the heavy, often uncelebrated, quiet work of self-trust. It's about presence. It's having the immense courage to read the energy of your culture, synthesize what it means for your business's capacity, and act on it long before the performance wall is hit.
Well said.
It's standing in that incredibly uncomfortable gap between what the trailing data says and what you know is approaching.
We are going to leave you with a list of action items today. There's no framework we can give you that makes this tension disappear. That wouldn't be appropriate for the depth of this scenario. The tension is the job.
No, it wouldn't. Providing a checklist would just be offering another comforting illusion of certainty.
Instead, we want to leave you with a final reflective thought. It's adapted directly from the themes of the scenario itself, and it's something for you to carry with you into your next meeting, or maybe just ponder on your commute. If you closed your laptop right now, if you completely ignored all the spreadsheets, the green dashboards, and the comforting lagging indicators of yesterday's success, and you simply sat and observed the current energy of the people around you, what is it silently predicting for your next quarter? Because whatever you see out there, it is coming, regardless of what the numbers say today.
Thank you for tuning into another inspiring episode of Leading Beyond Limits. If you enjoyed today's conversation and want to hear more from our incredible guests, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback means the world to us. And if you have a remarkable leader in mind who you'd like to hear on our show, or any questions and comments, feel free to reach out to us. You can find our contact information in the show notes. Remember, leadership knows no bounds, and with the right insights and determination, you too can lead beyond limits. Until next time, keep reaching for the stars and leading with purpose.